and welcome to Breaking the Paradigm. I'm Andrew Falstich.
And I am Kelly Janellis, and we are your co-hosts. The mission of this podcast is to have conversations that break the traditional paradigm of education, whether at the classroom level, the global level, or anywhere in between.
We are not interested in rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Rather, we are interested in true transformational change. And we are very excited for this live episode. We are live right now across Riverside, Substack, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So wherever you're joining us from, we are so glad you're here. We are joined by the Montessori Public Policy Initiative, led by Vyju Kadambi and Denise, Monnier. And we've had this podcast in the works for a couple of weeks now, and we are here on a bit of a time-sensitive matter because there's a really important event coming up that we'd like to see all of you be a part of. But first, I'd like to welcome Vyju and Denise and invite them to share with us their Montessori origin stories.
Thanks, Andrew. Like Andrew said, I'm Denise Monnier. I have a little bit of an unusual Montessori origin story in that I am not a Montessori prepared teacher of any sort. I went to Montessori school. I think I started in 1966. So a long, long time ago at a school in the basement of a church. I think I was in their very first class. Now that school is gigantic and goes through adolescent age and has hundreds of students. But that experience, in my opinion, really changed me as a person and set me up for who I would become. And I pretty much forgot about it for 40 years until my daughter was enrolled in Montessori school as well. And when I watched her go through the program as a parent and realized how important that had been to me and how important it was to her as a person, I had renewed passion and came from a completely different career back into Montessori education. And I really floundered around for years trying to find my real place in Montessori until I was introduced to advocacy work. And I feel like, Andrew, you said it in your introduction that the way to really change the situation for Montessori education and for families to be able to get access to the kind of high quality experiences my daughter and I both had is in part through public policy, which is the thing that I'm good at in this world. So that's how I got here. And through that experience, I got to know Vyju Kadambi, who is going to tell you about herself as well.
So my origin story is that my children went to a Montessori school and their teacher looked at me and said, "You should become a Montessori teacher. You observe details about children that most parents miss." And so I said, maybe I'll do it. I ended up going to Seton Montessori Institute. And over the years, I've been trained at different levels and also ran two schools and worked in a public charter school as well. And through my journey, I started working in Indiana doing advocacy work. And that's when Denise and I worked together on a couple of projects for Indiana. And I was without a job. I was at the MPPI conference and I said, well, if there's ever a job, I'd love to work for MPPI. And sure enough, the next day, a job became available because somebody resigned. And so here I am, 5 years later, still going strong. So that's my story. But
That's incredible. I love the world sometimes just works out the way that it's supposed to, doesn't it? Can you tell us more about MPPI, and maybe you can speak a little bit about what exactly you mean by public policy? Are we talking about public schools? Are we talking about political policies? What do you mean? What does MPPI stand for, and what is public policy through your eyes?
So I can explain what we do, and then Vyju can explain to you about what public policy is. I feel like the really important background of MPPI is that, we live and work and function in this very fractured community, and it's fractured in the Montessori community, although getting so much better, in part thanks to folks like you who really do a lot of, I'll use the phrase reaching across the aisle, even though it sounds like politics, but there's a lot of politics. But I think the important thing about how MPPI started is that both the American Montessori Society and the Association Montessori International USA were doing policy advocacy work individually and had committees that did that work. And the leaders of those organizations at that time came to the realization that not only is our collective voice too small, their individual voices were way too small. And so they started a partnership, which eventually became MPPI. After years of volunteer work, we were funded, and we now have 45 states worth of advocates working to try to change policy in support of Montessori education.
And I'll tell you a little bit about public policy. Oftentimes, you're right, Kelly. People hear the word Montessori Public Policy Initiative and they assume that we just work for public Montessori schools. But public policies are policies that affect everybody, the public. And you, me, everybody is part of that public. And these are laws they could be funding streams, it could be laws, it could be rules that affect the general public. And till recently, I'm going to say recently because Montessori has been around for so long, but till recently, we haven't had a voice at that table to actually influence those policies to support Montessori education and full implementation of Montessori education in all spaces, public, private, for-profit, not-for-profit, it doesn't matter. These laws and policies affect all programs. Different ways, but still affect all programs. So we are there to help any of those policy changes.
Agreed. And I feel like sort of the unifying thing about this is, even though you can say like, oh, I'm from a public school, or I'm from a private school, like our schools are so different, but the Montessori-ness of that is, really the same. And so the challenges that we face within policy are always going to be the same, whether it's within, child care licensing regulations or your public school district or state Department of Education's rules, or things like federal policy streams or state policy streams like child care subsidies, which I think is the largest form of financial support for families with low income and young children. So those things are really important. But the things that make Montessori excellent Montessori, which is, the Montessori materials, are well and carefully prepared teachers who have that Montessori teacher preparation experience, right? Their work cycle in the classroom, the way we use observation as a tool for building the curriculum. I'm the wrong person to be talking about this because I'm not the Montessori teacher. I don't know how that happened, but you get what I mean. Like the 3 or mixed age groupings, like kindergarten being a part of the 3 to 6 program is always a policy challenge. 6th grade being a part of 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and it continues on. And so these things, the things that make us Montessori are the things that create the policy challenges. And whether or not we're, the technical term is the delivery method, is that's not what's important. What's important is that every child who gets enrolled in one of our schools gets a real Montessori experience. And then we have sort of like an environment that we've built of Montessori advocacy. And I'm going to stop talking again and let Vyju explain our Montessori advocacy environment.
So what she's referring to, I think, is this, we have state groups. As she said earlier, we have work in about 45 states. And the work is really done. We are a 2-person organization, by the way. We forgot to say that. MPPI is just us 2. There's nobody else. We do have a very supportive board. But our biggest thing is that we have advocates in these 45 states doing the heavy lifting. We are there to provide the resources. We're there to provide research that they need. We'll help them with writing testimony, whatever it may take. But we're there. We're the support team for them. Because if somebody lives in Tennessee, they don't want to listen to me because I live in Indiana. And so no lawmaker, no Tennessee Board of Education wants to hear from somebody in Indiana. They want to hear from their local people. So that's why we have to have these local state groups, or sometimes it's a group, sometimes it's a single person. That's why I want to use that term loosely as I say this. Sometimes it's one person that reaches out to us saying, hey, we have this policy thing in whatever state it is, can you help us? And then we would have a state organization. Of course we're going to help you because we want to see you being able to provide fully implemented Montessori. ultimately. So that's our mission. We keep to it. So it doesn't matter, but it can be anywhere between, like she said, from childcare licensing questions to, okay, we want to get the Montessori teacher credential recognized as a pathway to licensure. So it could be any one of those things. And we just start researching and let's get you what you need, figure out who you need to talk to, and let's see how we can make this work.
So then those advocates are like, they're like the, oh, sorry, Andrew. Do you want to ask me a question?
No, go ahead.
Or should I just ramble? Okay. So those advocates are really like the bedrock of our work, right? And we create the support system for them. But then around all of them, like AMS and AMI USA obviously are parent organizations. So we are their policy arm. But then there are many other advocates, there are Montessori organizations like MACD, like NCMPS, like PMAI, IMC, MEPI, that's a lot of letters, right? And I'm sure I didn't get everyone, but I don't usually do this live thing. So that's my best effort. But all of those folks, and then also within AMS, we have the Regional Action Commission, because that's such a large community. We have them as our contact point. So people get to us and get to ask us questions about their policy issues. But then we also have all the schools and all the teacher preparation programs that we're working to support. And then all the way around that, we have like the families and the children that are in those schools too. And I feel like that's one of our really most important untapped group of advocates is all of those people, the families and the schools. And actually that reminds me that maybe we're going to meet some students in our event this upcoming week, right?
I want to say one other group that we work with is organizations that are not Montessori but aligned well with us, like NACI or 0 to 3, because we all want high quality education for children. So we do have an alignment there. So we work with organizations, and so we leave the Montessori silo, if you will, because they're already doing good advocacy work. We can first of all learn from them, number one. Number two, add our voice to their policy requests as well. And so they're a great support. I think it's a mutually beneficial relationship with those organizations outside of Montessori. Go ahead, Andrew. You were going to ask a question. Go for it.
No, that's fine. I love the responsive nature of the work that you all do. And I think that's really critically important. And so I do have sort of a bigger question, but I do want to get to, well, two things before I go on with my question. For folks who are here live, if you have questions for Denise and Vyju, drop them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. I think no matter what platform you're on, I should be able to see them. So just an open invitation if you're interested, because I do see that we have people here, which is awesome. But there is a reason that we all have, or the three of us have these Montessori hats. It's not just because we have a great sense of fashion. Sorry, Kelly, we're going to get Kelly a hat. But there is an event happening next Thursday as part of the AMS event in DC. And I'd love to hear from you all a little bit about what that will be. What you're inviting folks, both adults and students possibly. I've got a few of my students that are interested. We can talk about that after. What you're inviting them to do and why this work is so important.
Go ahead and start, Denise, and I'll add in.
Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about how, we do all this work at the state and local level, and we're talking about our 45 different states worth of advocates, but how does that become a federal policy issue? I feel like this is kind of a good year to be doing this because anyone who didn't know anything about federal policy 12 months ago has probably had an earful of news about federal policy in the last year and hopefully maybe increase your level of knowledge. But we actually not very often interact with federal policymakers, but we have in the past. And what has happened in the past is that we find out about a bill that could be really beneficial to our school communities and teachers and families. But the problem is that the bill is already written in a way that doesn't accommodate Montessori education. Remember how I listed all our policy issues? Those are the same ones everywhere, no matter what's happening. And we have actually done federal lobbying asking legislators to change language in bills to support Montessori education and been told that it's too late to do that. Once a bill gets a certain distance, they don't want to change language or meaning because they want it to pass, right? And so and there are some bills coming up. There are some issues coming up in the next, 12 to 18 months. And I'm sure more after the midterms that we want to be able to speak to but we have to already have those relationships with those legislators. And so that is what gave birth to this idea about our Montessori on the move classroom to Capitol Hill workshop day. And so I'll let Vyju tell a little bit more about like how we can, because we didn't really come up with the idea actually so much. Yeah, go ahead.
So Denise and a few other people, and I'm not going to mention names because very small group of people, but still from our Montessori community, has gone to the NACI Public Policy Forum annually. Like every year they have this in February, and they take the people that come from different states, and they organize a walk to Capitol Hill to meet with legislators to talk on behalf of early childhood education. Well, since the AMS conference this year, since TME is going to be in DC, it was Denise's brilliant idea. Let's do it like how NACI does it. Let's take a group of our advocates and go to Capitol Hill together with our federal Montessori legislative platform. And so, which I was signed on right away, obviously. It's been super exciting. And I'll tell you, over the course of these few months, we have now 30 plus meetings with legislators. And we're going to have close to about 70 people attending and coming with us to Capitol Hill. So it's been exciting, and 30 plus meetings. And some of them are going to be going back and forth because they have 3 meetings in one state. So it's really exciting to see this. And so I'm super excited. And if you do choose to join us, you do get this lovely cap. But I'm going to let Denise talk about what we're planning for the whole day so that I can turn it back over to her.
Thanks, Vyju. So yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, the most important thing here is to start these relationships that we haven't really had, or in the rare cases where someone actually has a relationship, really come to them and talk about Montessori and our policy needs. But then Vyju mentioned how there's a very small group of us that go to this NACI Public Policy Forum every year, which really is early childhood focused. So, you know, it doesn't encompass all of our schools, but is a very large movement. And what the collaborative hope of NACI and AMS is, and MPPI is that every year when NACI does that PPF day, that there will be a Montessori cohort of more than 2 of us really bringing that Montessori message along with the NACI policy platform. So we're basically modeling it after what they do, so that then our folks can just slide into that, because we don't have a Montessori conference every year in DC. And so we want to still have that voice and still have those relationships. So I think what we'll do on Thursday is we start at 8:30 a.m. We'll have like coffee and welcome time. One of the most important things that legislators and their staff, and most often you meet with staff, but that it's really important to meet with staff, because the staff are the people who do the work in terms of collecting all of the important information that goes into those bills. The legislators rely on them really heavily. Not that it's not lovely to meet your legislator and have a fabulous photo op, but those staffers are the people who are really often sitting down and writing that language. But what we're going to do is, so a thing that's really important to them is to hear real stories from folks that live in their states and districts and the way policy affects them. And it's really hard to tell a story that, it's kind of funny because I'm telling stories all this whole time, but it's really hard to come up with a quick and to the point story that is your personal story, something that happened to you or you were a part of in your classroom, that shows, number one, how transformative Montessori education can be both for a child and for the teacher, for the adult, and explains why we need specific policies, specific ways. And so we're really going to focus on preparing those stories that morning. And we have like a whole new like section of our usual presentation that we're going to use to work on helping everyone make sure they're solid with their stories. And then we're really excited to have a panel of some both Montessori and policy experts. We've been talking about NACI a lot, and Daniel Haynes, who's the policy king in charge of policy at NACI, whose title I don't remember, but he is the policy guy at NACI and is super knowledgeable and also just a really interesting speaker in person, will be joining us. And then Katie Ham, who works in part for the Ed Council, which is an organization that really watches all education bills and what comes out from the federal government and state governments, and sort of like crunches and munches it and makes it into this really great weekly informational email that is, at least if you're a policy wonk like us, great reading. So Katie will join us. Both of them specialize in early childhood. And then Gina Lofquist, who was formerly at AMS and is a Montessori consultant, whose title I also don't know, but she was like the king. And what she knows, has a background in public schools and teacher preparation. And the three of them are going to talk about, first of all, policy issues facing our community. They're going to answer questions, and they're going to talk about how we move our advocacy work to that space where we're talking about what Montessori needs over what our individual types of schools need, to make sure that we are very clear with what that Montessori policy message is. And then after that ends, without even getting a break or anything, we're all going to start heading straight to the Capitol and to all of our meetings. And that's going to go on all afternoon and culminate at like 4:30. We're going to try to do a huge group photo on the Capitol steps. And we've reached out to lots of news outlets in addition to try to get some coverage for it.
That's incredible. Oh my goodness, what a day full of big work. I've got two questions that have come up. One is, I know you touched on the whole day's agenda, but could you extrapolate for us some specific outcomes that you're hoping to get out of the thing? And how can people come and support and be there and cheer you on or participate, or what can folks do?
I can talk about how people can participate. So it is not too late to register. You can go to the AMS website and there's a register for the conference. They've left it open. You can register up till that day, and you can join our session, and you can join us. Even, let's say you're going for a school tour that day at the AMS conference, you can join us in the afternoon to go to Capitol Hill with us. Like, cause that's over in the morning, but you can still join us in the afternoon. So just reach out to AMS and you can register and join us. And we want as many people there as possible. And even if you don't have a meeting with your legislator, or it's too late, you can still be part of a group that's meeting with somebody. So even because that itself will give you some practice in how to speak to a legislator, it'll give you that feeling that you've been in Capitol Hill talking to, even if it's not your legislator. It's okay. You can be a part, and you can just introduce yourself and be supportive of the people who are asking for something from their legislators. So we encourage it, because trust me, all of us are nervous to go. At least I am. Okay, so I'll speak for myself. It is kind of a little intimidating. So the more people that are there, the less nervous we all get. It's not too late. And even if you can't make it for all of that, there is going to be a photo op session, a photo opportunity at 4:30 p.m. on the steps of Capitol Hill. So you can join us for that. If nothing else, you can join us for that. So Denise, you want to take the first part?
Super valuable. Like, if that photo has 100 more people than came to the Capitol and met with legislators, that's still really valuable for us. Because again, we're hoping to get some good publicity for MPPI and for Montessori and for AMS out of this entire thing. So what do we hope to achieve with these meetings? I feel like this is a little ambiguous, because right now we don't have a specific policy ask from the federal government. There is not a bill right now where we are struggling to get Montessori policy accommodations written in. But that's a good thing, because we're not behind the 8 ball right now. We're working to prepare for the future. So the really important things that we want to do is meet our legislators, as many as possible, share who we are, give them a small, short education about what Montessori education is, and also share some stories about what happens in our schools and what happens when policy doesn't support what we do, so that they know who it is in their state or district that they can call or to expect a call from, because legislators don't always call you whenever they think of something. You do have to keep watching all of those bills as they come out, but that's what MPPI is here for. But so that they know who you are. So when Vyju meets with her senator from Indiana and explains all about Montessori education, and then there is a federal bill that affects us, and she emails the staffer to talk to them, they know exactly who she was, and they know a really nice story about her school or one of the schools in their state. And so we're already that far into that relationship, and that makes it easier to do that work when it's actually time. And then over time, say like we get groups to go to NACI next year and the next year, we're meeting with those same legislators' offices, and they're like, oh, those Montessori people, right? Like they need this stuff, that they start to know, right? And so it's really important to start to build those relationships before it's crisis time, right? So that's what our goal is to either start or cultivate these relationships, and to increase knowledge about what Montessori education is, why it's important.
I want to highlight a couple of things. First, we have a comment from a viewer, Kathy Minardi. Hi, Kathy. It's good to see you this way. She writes, "I wish Congress would sign the Human Rights Accord, especially for the rights of the child. We are the only country that has not signed it." Yes, I mean, I think there's so many things across the spectrum beyond education that the U.S. needs to seriously get behind. And one of the things that I'm hearing as a through line, and that I'm really appreciating about this work that you all are doing, is in the U.S., both political parties have really seeded the debate on education, and all our mainstream politicians are arguing about is different ways to do the conventional system. And so we need to really reinvigorate that debate, that there is not just one way to do education. And by the way, it's not rote memorization, shoving standards down kids' throats on day 43 because that's what needs to be learned that day, but a developmentally appropriate approach that honors the development of each young person. I think we hear a lot from folks in politics that, oh my gosh, everything is in crisis in our society and yada yada. Well, our society is a result of the way we socialize our children, which for most people has been in the conventional education system. So if we see a problem with the way our society is constructed, we have to change the type of education that we offer. But I'll take myself off the soapbox. You all are talking about being advocates and engaging in advocacy. And I wonder what you might say to someone out there who's passionate about Montessori, but perhaps doesn't yet see themselves as an advocate, or worries that they might not have enough to say, or might not be the expert that's needed. How might you encourage them to get involved in this? Go for it.
I'll take this one, if that's okay with you, Denise. First of all, I think every teacher has been an advocate. They have advocated for a child in their classroom. They may have advocated for professional development. They may have advocated for materials in their classroom. So every teacher has been an advocate, number one. Number two, if you're scared, you don't know how to have these conversations, that's what we're here for. We will help you. Like I've had 2 emails this weekend asking us, okay, I've got this meeting. Now what do? I need the talking points. Help me. We will, of course, help you. We're going to help you let's figure out who this person is. Who is this legislator? What are their educational priorities? And let's find the through line for Montessori with those educational priorities. And so that's our other goal, right? It doesn't matter which side of the political aisle that your legislator is on. It really doesn't, because like you said, Andrew, this is a bipartisan issue. It doesn't matter. It's just how we frame it for different people. We just have to frame it in a way that they can hear it. And that's what we do. We're there to help you. So, and you're going to practice, and I'm going to say this again, no one is going alone into a legislator's office. We'll find somebody to go with you, because it is intimidating. It is scary. But once you do it, it gets easier. It's just like with everything else. The first time you did anything, it was scary to do, and then it'll get easier. So that's my encouragement.
I agree. And Andrew, you were talking about how the system is so broken. And one thing I always I say that as well. But one thing I always like to add to that is that the teachers are not what's broken, right? Mm-hmm. Like teachers everywhere give so much and care so much and see and function within the restrictions that are provided. And I think that it's an entire community of people who are really dedicated and passionate about what they do, and so often restricted from doing what I think they know is right? And so I always want to make sure that people don't think that we're trying to say that if you're not a Montessori teacher, you're not amazing. That's not the case at all. It's that the system is the problem and not the folks working so hard for children every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll share a quick anecdote about that. A few years ago, I was working in a program in Maryland. It was an alternative teacher certification program for early childhood. And so I was working, I led the instructional coaching team as part of that. So I was working with folks who, some of them own their own childcare centers, some of whom were, first through third grade teachers. And I was working with this one incredible teacher and owner of her own organization. And she said, I'm being asked, or not asked, required to say how the environment I'm offering for 3-year-olds meets college and career readiness standards. And I have to link X number at X time. And she's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do all that? And there was a lot of coaching that I did with her of build the most developmentally appropriate and beautiful environment, and then worry about how that 3-year-old is getting ready for college and career. But that's a great example of a policy that is actively harming, that's getting in front of, for a lot of these educators, truly developmentally appropriate, life-changing work because they're worried about how a 3-year-old is being prepared for college. But of course, that looks great I'm sure, on the front of a policy, all kids in Maryland, college and career ready, right? And so it helps, doing this work can really help us get back to the human aspect, because I'm sure most legislators, they're not educators. They probably haven't been educators. They probably don't really think about or have any awareness of how this impacts folks on a day-to-day basis.
And you can usually tell the legislators who have been educators. And that sort of leads me to a thought that we always use when we meet with anyone, but especially with policymakers. And that is, before you talk about anything else, you want to ask them what their Montessori experience is, just like you all asked us at the beginning of this session today. I will say that my very first legislative meeting was with my congressperson, who's still the same person. And I was with the NACI group, and they made me lead because I was the only constituent. Because I'm in Montessori, because I'm not in a classroom, I didn't understand their policy platform. I didn't understand what to say. I was so nervous that this is what I do when I'm nervous. I just spill my guts. So I was like, hi, it's so nice to meet you. I'm Denise. I'm supposed to be in charge, but I just can't do it because I don't know anything about what I'm talking about. What I know about is Montessori. And my congressman said, I went to Montessori school, right? And that was the start of our relationship. And if I hadn't I should have done that maybe in a cooler, smoother way and asked him about his Montessori experience. But that makes a really big difference, because if folks know something, usually it's positive, but even if they have a negative thought, if you ask your legislator, what do they know about Montessori? And they say, isn't that place where the kids just do whatever they want all day and never learn anything? That still gives you a starting spot to start talking about what really happens. And what you need to help the myth you need to dispel, right? So that's just a really important point that I feel like you brought up, and I didn't really talk about it when you brought it up. So.
Yeah. One thing that I have to say is a theme that I'm noticing from this whole conversation is collaboration and community, and that none of us are in this work together. And I'm so grateful for all of the ways that you two are reaching across the aisle, if you will, politically speaking, in terms of Montessori, even Montessori to other progressive education, all of those things, because, we're all stronger together. And I'm feeling encouraged by you both to step out of my comfort zone and do my own advocating. And it's helpful to know that you all are such a great resource. I'm wondering if you can talk about if folks aren't able to join you in Washington, D.C., what are other ways that people could maybe decide that they want to get those last 5 states advocated for, or they could collaborate with you? And then another way, how can folks get involved beyond your work in Washington, D.C.?
You want me to take that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can take that. So the best thing to do is if you're in one of those 5 states that does not have, and the way to find out, we forgot to mention this, is if you go to our website, there is a tab that says, I think, state something. I can't remember the name of it right now. Sorry. But it's, and on that is listed all the state advocacy groups. Every state is listed. And if your state doesn't have an advocacy group, reach out to us. Because you don't even have to be a 501c3 and be a formalized organization to do advocacy work. So we can start. We had somebody reach out from a state that had only like 10 or 12 Montessori schools. We can still do advocacy, right? It doesn't matter how big or small you are. We can do it. And if you're in one of those states that already has a group, your first step is to reach out to whoever's listed as our advocacy lead, because they know the work that's going on in their state with advocacy, and that's who you need to talk to before you talk to anybody else. Because that has happened. Like people say, oh, I know a senator. Let me just go ask them for whatever I need for my school. And that doesn't bring a unified voice in. And they find out later that somebody else has already been doing this work for a long time. So we really want to be unified within the state. So that's usually my soapbox that I stand on. So
that's good. I would add to that, there are policymakers, state agencies, state legislators, and federal legislators in your state and in your hometown. As a matter of fact, Thursday, when we're at the Capitol, I think is the last day of the legislative session before they go on their spring break, which I don't really think is an actual spring break. I think they go home and work in their office at home. So if you want to take the message to those same legislators, you can meet with them in their home office. You can meet with them by Zoom. One of the few positive things that happened through the COVID crisis is that everyone learned how to use web conversations instead of just only in person, which is the way government always was before that. And so you can reach out to us, you can reach out to your legislators and policymakers. And another thing you can do is support us by donating to our work, because everything we have offered up until now basically is free, except these hats. You can donate to our organization to help further the work that we do. But I'm not saying we're prepared anyway to do that now.
And can you tell folks your website, like where, just, I don't know if we've said it before, but where they can find you?
It's Montessori Advocacy. Oh, go ahead for it.
Sorry. It's MontessoriAdvocacy.org.
Amazing. MontessoriAdvocacy.org. The event is this Thursday as part of the AMS conference that's in DC. We will hear more from Denise and Vyju on a future episode, but we wanted to go live today to really share about this, really impressive work that they're doing as part of this conference. Before we sign off from this live stream, any last things you'd like to leave listeners with as we lead into this big event?
Join us. Just take the leap and join us.
Yes, do. Take the leap and join us in DC, or take the leap and join us after that.
Yes, either way, take the leap.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Denise and Vyju. We really appreciated having you on the podcast. Thanks to all those out there who were listening. Really appreciated your attendance, whether you're live, whether you're watching this later.